Well met, lords and ladies, Jacob Butter speaking, and a warm welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. And yes, I am once again using, can't see it from this angle, it's the selfie stick. Yes, we are following in the selfie stick era, and I'm also wearing a new shirt that I just found on the wash pile. I thought it was a mistake, so what I was going to say was, oh, then this was something that I would wear anyway, so why not put it on because I thought it was funny. But as it turns out, no, this was actually a gift. So yes, thank you once again to my parents for that. Was something that I noticed in the corner. Probably a far better choice than my random Italian chocolate and Slovenian soap that I brought back. Which, incidentally, yes, I am indeed back, as the title probably suggests. I haven't decided yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm just going to call this I'm Back, or something along those lines. So, yes. The adventure has indeed concluded. And so, it corresponds to me to tell you all about the rest of said adventure. But first, something I forgot to mention in the previous video. And it pertains to the very first day that we were actually there on the trip, and that is that we actually stopped by the Vatican. So that was that day between the four of us, we visited, well, we were in 4 different countries, each of us 3. We first of all flew to Italy, and then of course we crossed the border without passports, weirdly, and there we were, which is interesting because our religion teacher from way back in the day once actually said that it was very hard to get into the Vatican and they didn't actually let a lot of people in, which is bizarre to me because that it was just crowded. Well, it wasn't too crowded actually. It was decently packed, but yeah, it was it was mostly tourists who were there. So you would have thought, oh, well, okay, what does she mean? Because the story goes that she basically was in Florence at one point, and she was going around seeing a bunch of things, and then it was some sort of tour of hers, and one thing she wanted to see was David by Michelangelo, the famous statue. So what she did was, okay, so I'm done with Florence now, I'm going to go and head out to Rome, and I have a few days. And so she searched and searched, but couldn't find it anywhere, and at one point actually just broke down and was crying on the side of wherever it was. And then this priest comes up to her, and we asked, oh, why are you crying? What is wrong? I think it turns out that he actually spoke Spanish, so convenient for her. And what that meant was, then she said, oh, well, I've been going around, I'm trying to find the David by Michelangelo, and I can't find it. It's like, well, I came all the way from Florence. And then the priest goes, but the David from Michelangelo is in Florence. And then she's like, what? No way. It's like, yes. And I can confirm it is there. I didn't actually see it, because it turns out that the gallery that we went to was not the correct one. We realized that only too late, and by that time it was all closing, so we only saw the replica, which was just outside on display for everyone, which is interesting. But yeah, turns out I felt the same way with that knowledge. But the point is that the priest wanted to make it up to her, and so he said, okay, come with me. And then she followed and was like, well, where are we going? I'm going to show you the Vatican. Now to a religious person, I'm not sure she was teaching at this point. This might have been when she was a student or something, like university or whatever. I don't really quite know. I forget how old she actually looked and how far back she was actually thinking of at the time. But then, you know, she was allowed to actually go in, and then everyone who was there was actually apparently going, "Oh, Padre Luigi, oh, Padre Luigi," because it was Father Luigi. That was the name of the priest. As it turns out, he was some high-ranking position in that particular branch of the clergy, or so the story goes. And I think at one point, actually, she did say that she saw not the previous pope, but the pope before that one. So the one who was the previous pope at the time of telling us the story. So the one whoever was before Benedict the 16th. So yeah, we didn't see the pope. So I guess that part of the tour might have been the particularly special part for her, I suppose. If that story is indeed true, because I don't know if they relaxed their border policies or they realized that, oh, you know, we're an independent state and we need some form of greater income than just, you know, donations to the Catholic Church as a whole. So they decided to let people in. I actually have no idea. But the story seemed more and more far-fetched the more time we actually spent there and the more things we were actually able to do. The only restriction they seemed to have really was that some people had to put on this particular like cloth or something so that it would cover up their shoulders or, you know, their upper thighs if they were going inside of the church, and that was it. And as it turns out, that was actually a common practice in Italy as well, because most of the churches or cathedrals they went to had the exact same policy, and there was security guards around there and everything. So that apparently was considered. That was it. So they even have a bookshop as well, which with a .va website domain, which I've still got to check out, because that does sound very interesting. Although it sounds like the kind of thing that if you actually are a voice actor, you would have a website with .va as a separate domain, but maybe that's not possible. Maybe that's the one website that has taken that over. I don't see anywhere else that had anything. We joked that the gift shop was like the big source of income for the entire country. So yeah, pretty eventful first day. I forgot to mention it. So now on to the rest of the journey. So I think immediately after recording in that castle, oh no, we were actually in Ljubljana at the time. Yeah, so after that was actually probably our favorite day of the entire trip, collectively. Or maybe our second favorite, it depends. Because basically what happened was, you know, we went for a swim in the lake. Which, yeah, you can do that in Lake Bled at some portions. Some places they will fine you, but there are specific areas if you just walk around it. If you see a bunch of people, you know, at some boardwalks, and some of them happen to be in the water, that's the place to go. So naturally, we all jumped in. We're overwhelmed by the freezing cold, but, you know, we survived. And it wasn't freezing cold, it was actually alright after a little bit. It's basically like getting into a pool, except for you absolutely cannot see the bottom. None of us had goggles, so we didn't really try that hard to do that. But for two of my friends decided, okay, we're going to open our eyes in the water and we're going to try and see if we can go down. Apparently one of them descended 3 meters and still couldn't see it. But rest assured, there was a small portion I checked where it was just shallow enough, but the thing is it dips very quickly. It's not like with the sea or a pool where, you know, the shallow end is decent and then it just gradually slopes down. No, it's pretty much you're here on the surface, you dip, the water's there, and then it continues to just plummet, essentially. So I was on my tiptoes, basically centimeters away from the edge. So I'm the tallest out of our group, so you can imagine what that must have been like for them. They didn't really try that part The major stuck to the center. We relaxed on the boardwalk, really. Talked to a couple of German girls. That was it. But yeah, very fun. And then after that, I was it the same day? I don't think it was the same day. It may have been the same day. Oh yeah. Wait, no, it wasn't. We did go for a little bit of a expedition after that, but then the next day was the real hiking, which I think is where we actually reached our record of steps taken in one single day. And which, by the way, yes, we do keep track of that, except for if Pika's phone happens to be out of charge, or, you know, obviously we can't factor in uphill and downhill and stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting idea, and so it was slightly demoralizing for the days that we actually did decide, okay, today's going to be a relaxed day. We're not going to walk around too much in all these other places. Let's just take it easy. And I think the minimum was something like 258 steps on one day, but most of them were in the tens of thousands. So yeah, that was in fact 20s of thousands, I should say. I think we're gonna go this way. Let them use the path. Oh, or not, okay. Never mind. Probably trying to open a door or something. Hello. I don't know. Okay, so yeah, so that hiking day, we'd actually gone to the tourist office before that, and we'd asked a couple of different routes that could be recommended for people who were not exactly looking to destroy their entire central nervous system through lack of practice and complete overwhelming exposure. So we got a couple of suggestions, and actually the one that we were going to do was something called Visevnik, but we never actually did that. I can't remember what the one was referred to, but that was a very interesting route. It was very much uphill very quickly, and then after that there was a downhill in the sun. So the first part not so good, and we had to actually reserve what water we could carry with us, because our water bottles at the time were not suited for that. We did eventually acquire a giant water bottle, but by that point it was already too late. It was several days later. So we then proceeded to find this small vending machine or something, which was basically like, oh, this is some of our local products. So you had stuff like stuff like beers, and which, by the way, apparently is on my shirt. But yeah, it's stuff like beers, and I think there was some jam or marmalade or something. Naturally, didn't go for either of those. Nothing against marmalade, obviously. It's just that's not what you want when you're dying of thirst. So yeah, so we tried a small bottle of blackcurrant juice, and actually the way that it worked was essentially based on trust. So there were some recommended prices, but you basically left whatever you wanted. We did try and estimate, okay, let's leave what we can here that is vaguely approximate based on whatever coins and notes we have. So we stuck close to the recommended prices. We're not going to be like, oh, let's just take a bunch of these, because technically speaking you could do that by those rules. No one was watching. But yeah, not recommended. And actually, that suggestion was thrown around, but I, as the proclaimed Jiminy Cricket of the group, shut that down. And yes, I was referred to as Jiminy Cricket several times during our escapades, which I shall not go into because I don't want to get any of us in trouble. So yeah, so we left that. The blackcurrant juice was fine, not like the stuff we get here. Basically, it was very, very. It was much thicker, I guess, more concentrated. So not like squash. But yeah, it was. You had to have a fair amount of it to quench your thirst. So when we got back, because we circled around and we returned, I was like, okay, well we've run out of water by this point entirely. So I bought the last 2 of those and I put them in, and that's when. So that was our resources for a while. And Peak at one point actually said it was like drinking blood and having it return, which I don't think so. I thought it was okay. It could have done with being watered down a little bit, but then again, that might be, you know, the extreme thirst talking. So yeah, but eventually we did find the only water fountain that was around for 4 miles and miles. So yeah, then I was told, okay, you just drink all of the stuff that you bought and then we'll fill up everything. And so we did. It was kind of like, there was a debate of whether or not the water was drinkable, but it did come up as a search for actual fountains. It would seem pretty weird if that was not the case. So, and yeah, it turned out that was actually the best water that we'd ever tasted. Not we ever tasted on that journey, I mean. Again, that might be the thirst talking. And one of us decided to actually not drink at all from there, out of the risk. And then after that, when we got to Milan, nothing compared. Because yeah, as it turns out, the as far as Italian water fountains go, the peak is absolutely Rome. They have ones where you can actually block the spout and then it comes out from the top of it, and then you can actually drink from it as you would, you know, like typical park fountains you would see in the US, for example, or in, I guess, in high schools or whatever. So as a challenge, we filled up the water bottles like that sometimes. But yeah, basically the Milan water was sometimes just warm, and it wasn't particularly tasty. It was drinkable, but it wasn't tasty. So by this point we were already missing Slovenia, because it was, I said before, it's kind of like Galicia in a lot of ways. You know, fairly quiet, not too many tourists. Surprisingly, a bunch of Spanish people. We realized that everywhere we went, we found Spanish speakers. Not locals, they were other tourists mostly. And sometimes it's even just the first people we found. But yeah, because by that point we were already missing Slovenia, and also in Milan there wasn't too much for us to do. So we ended up, for the 3 days we were there, mostly relaxing, watching some movies and whatever, and then going out to basically the same areas a lot of the time. The one great place we went to was this castle, actually. So again, another castle. We were considering on the last day having a picnic there, but eventually decided to. There was this different park, maybe because by this point it was 2 in the afternoon and the blistering 31 degrees Celsius heat was getting to us. So we decided to stop because, yeah, it was becoming even though we walked far less in Milan most days than any other, except for the last day when we were trying to go around searching for a cheese shop that was open, because they wanted to get some cheese to bring back, and it turns out that on the day of the Virgin's Assumption, everything is closed. So, but other than that, we walked far less, but it still felt far more tiresome. So yeah, as a last stop on the journey, Milan was possibly a bit of a letdown, particularly for some of the other guys. For me, it was like, I'm perfectly happy, considering that these 3 days are the extended ones from our previous 9-day experience from the other years. So I am all for something that is far less cumbersome. Again, something in the vein of Galicia. That's just the typical holiday. So I've been there 9 times. But yeah, so as it turns out, that was slightly a bit of a letdown because we're missing Slovenia. But again, on that last day we got the full experience, and then afterwards, my goodness, I came back and just, well, I answered a few questions, collapsed in the car, came back home, collapsed luckily I'd had dinner already. So I could have announced I was back last night, didn't, because yeah, no. I was out of it. And then I woke up earlier than I normally do. So probably because that was what happens on those other days. Then again, I was the one who was waking some people up sometimes. I don't really know. But the time is up, and I think that's good for now. So please leave a like or dislike, because your opinion matters, as I've done so already. And on that note, until next time.